counties or sectors or whatever.
You have a special badge if you check in more than once in the same election cycle or something.
The
Chicago badge or something like that.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of the advertising, where it goes with advertising. You mentioned some of the analytics that you're providing to SMBs, and one of the panels coming up is going to be talking about the importance of geolocation in SMBs and the whole advertising mix. Historically, a really tough market to get at because you show them, you know, sort of the yellow pages have had them. There's not a whole bunch of other sophistication around that. What do you find that are sort of the challenges and maybe the potential for SMBs?
So when you're saying SMBs, are you talking about, is it bars and restaurants and shops?
Yeah, just a small, non-national.
Yeah, okay. Whenever I hear SMB, I always think Super Mario Brothers, and not small, medium business.
That was the second thing I thought of.
Yeah. So the challenge is, like, it's like you need a sales force to go out and reach a lot of these folks, right? And so, you know, when the Yellow Page has been doing this for years, like they go out and they call people and they get them to put ads and things, right? And Yelp has a huge sales force, and Google has a huge sales force. And, you know, we're still this small company. I don't think we're ready for that yet. But what we found has been, you know, we still need to reach these customers somehow. And what we've been finding is that, you know, just like we crowdsourced the app, like the development of the apps, and we've crowdsourced like the venue database. All that data has come from like people in this room and people all over the world. We've kind of crowdsourced this sales force. And so, you know, we joke about this, but we get like these smart-ass users that will go into a coffee shop and be like, haha, what do I get for being the mayor? And the guy who owns a coffee shop is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that happens like 4 or 5 times before they're like, okay, what? Mayor, FourSquare? And eventually, like, they become educated. And it's the users that are at the places educating the, educating the venues to sign up. And so I think we could probably formalize that process a little bit. But I really like the idea. There's something really strong there about crowdsourcing that sales force. And internally, you know, like we didn't come up with these ideas to reach out to local merchants. Like the merchants were doing it on their own. Like they made, you know, the story is that they made flyers back in San Francisco and they were hanging them up. Like, show us that you checked in on FourSquare and we'll give you something for free. And Naveen and I, they're like, shit, that's a good idea. Like, we should put that in the product. And so, you know, we talked to them, we started building these products. And now we're at the point where, you know, we're building things that they want to use, including building like, ways for venues that have heard about us, like in the Journal or the Times or whatever, to go and claim their venue, right? So the hardest part is like taking a FourSquare user account and tying it to like that Starbucks location or that coffee shop. Because the last thing you want is like some rogue user just being like, oh, guess what? I own all the coffee shops downtown, and they're just going to offer free specials, right? So it's very difficult to tie up a user to make sure that they own that actual location. But we've built a bunch of tools and technology that are enabling people to do that.
So if I own the shop on the corner, someone else can't replicate that.
Yeah, you basically you prove that.
It's actually a pretty sneaky idea.
Yeah, I mean Google's done this stuff, and I think Yelp's done some stuff similar. But I mean, there's only so many tricks that you can use there. It's like you build this piece of software that dials the business, and the guy answers the phone. It's like, here's the PIN. Now type in the PIN on the website. If those 2 things match, then it's authenticated.
Do you have any ideas on how this would work for Super Mario Brothers, or should we go on? Once you said that, I was sitting there thinking, I wonder how would I answer that?
Well, the whole thing is based off of Super Mario Brothers. Like, how do you make life more like Super Mario? Like, if you run over if you get a green mushroom and Mario gives you an extra guy, like, what does that extra guy look like in the real world? Is it you find this awesome restaurant?
When your kids are playing with those video games, don't discourage them. Yeah. It could end up for something good. Talk a little bit about national brands. You've also done some deals with national brands, and kind of what are they doing, and what are they sort of interested in?
Yeah, we've done a whole bunch of just like open experiments with brands and different media companies, and you know some of them make more sense than others, and a lot of this is just us, you know, being out there just trying to throw a bunch of things against the wall and see what works. Like the stuff that we've had the most success with is people that have content that overlays with the real world. So like Bravo TV was one of the first to do a partnership with us, and you know they've got a bunch of reality TV shows, and those reality TV shows take place like in reality, like in real like restaurants and bars and shops and salons, and so you know we're able to build these things like, oh, you're going to follow this particular show on FourSquare, and then as you're out and about and you're doing your thing, it's like, oh, this is the place across the street where such and such an episode 6 happened, right? Or the New York Times will do things where like they have all this content that's geotagged about best restaurants, or 36 hours in Munich, and we can basically take all this archived content, put it into FourSquare, tie it to that long, so that like when you actually land in Munich, on vacation a year from now, like that content is relevant and accessible to you. So that stuff is kind of easy. The harder stuff is like working with with consumer brands and like consumer packaged goods, because we haven't really figured out like how do we use FourSquare to help people sell batteries or sell soda or sell cereal. Like, you know, the conversation like, what do you do for like diapers? And it's like, well, maybe we could do like a new parent channel. And this is what new parents in Brooklyn should be doing. And that, like, we're starting to learn and get better at it. So.
Yeah, so it'll be an evolving thing. You know, one of the things, and I think, you know, if you're fortunate to stay in this room and don't deviate to any of the conferences, there are a couple more sessions coming up on location and advertising, where that mix is going to come. One of the things that just strikes me about the market is this contrast between a huge potential of what everyone's sort of generally acknowledging, huge potential of the marketing implications of location-based advertising market, but really, honestly, fairly small real ad spend today. And so you've got this huge potential, fairly small ad spend today. What's your feeling on that? I mean, are we sort of in an experimental stage, or how would you kind of characterize where we're at as an industry in terms of using location as something to give context? Because if there's a big market there, I don't think that spend is happening right yet.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, we're definitely still in that experimental stage. Like we try things with media companies, we try things with brands, and you know, when brands are spending money with us and not, you know, they're not spending millions of dollars. Like they're, you know, they're small ad spends.
Can you give a size of a typical?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they're 10 grand, sometimes they're 50 grand. Depends on what we do. It depends on, you know, like there's a lot of bartering back and forth.
So if you're an ad salesman, it's a tough living.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything that we do is custom. And has anyone here like tried to get in to do something with FourSquare? Has anyone been successful at it? Like it's tough. Like there's.
Put that guy on the next panel.
Yeah, I know, right? You should be up there talking about it. No, it's like we get, you know, hundreds of requests from people, and there's like 4 biz dev guys, and there's only so much we can do. And there's only so much we want to do because, you know, we don't want the product to be like just covered in ads. We want it to be baked into the experience. And so we're kind of taking our time there. I think the bigger, I'm not sure how the brand spends are gonna grow up. You know, it's probably people spending across a variety of different platforms. I'm really bullish on what we're doing with local merchants though. And it's, you know, it's signing up. If we can sign up a couple 100,000 merchants and get them, getting them paying for access to some of the tools that we're building, like that's going to put us in a really interesting spot.
And historically, the local merchants have been very interested in sort of the direct return. If I give someone, will someone walk in my door to buy something? Yeah. And I think you build that. You know, one of the things that strikes me is in trying to come up with location-based advertising is the advertising world is used to CPMs and sort of a denominator of impressions. And so many people in the location world are coming at it with not a whole bunch of impressions, maybe not a whole bunch of volume, but potentially very high value on each of those, right? The guy is somehow in your store engaging in the world around with, you know, whether it's a game. Does location need a different denominator besides impressions? I mean, is that what it's going to take? Because right now they're like at the opposite sides of this volume price matrix looking at each other.
I think the online world went from cost per impression to cost per click because it was more effective. And you know, I think the same thing will happen with mobile and with location, where it's not cost per click, but it's cost per check-in, right? And so if you are a local merchant and you're trying to get people to come to your coffee shop, then it might be, okay, well maybe I place some kind of special or promotion or special placement within FourSquare. And you know, you can track, did a person see that promotion, and what was the response time? Did they not show up? Did they show up 36 hours later? Did they show up 20 minutes later? And so that could be one of the metrics that that eventually we go into.
Will that be a condition? Because I mean, it seems like right now a lot of people who are looking at location solutions, and they come talk to people like maybe some of the people in our audience who are buying ads, and they're coming in, and the volumes that they're able to show just don't impress anybody, and so they're not really carving off a huge chunk of ad spend. Yeah. They're taking the the intern and say, go, here's 20 grand, go nuts, kid. I mean, so is that going to be a condition that the different denominator comes out at cost per something else, or how do you see it evolving?
It could be. I mean, I think we're still just like in the super early days of this, right? It kind of stretches into everything. People are like, oh, you guys aren't generating a ton of revenue. Oh, you don't have a ton of users. Oh, you don't have a ton of merchants signed up. And it's like, hey, I mean, we're 18 months old, we're like 35 people, like took Twitter 4 years, look where they are, took Facebook 6 years, look where they are. Like, you know, if you're not ready for it yet, give us a year, and like we'll be kicking ass a year from now. So don't worry about it. But yeah, it's like you approach people, or people approach us with the same type of skepticism. Like, who's going to do this stuff? And it's like, well, who was going to use Twitter back in the day? Everyone thought that was crazy, and people, thought FourSquare was crazy 12 12 months ago and 6 months ago, and some people still think it's crazy now, and like we can definitely see it turning, and we can see that the interest, just kind of switching, especially as we can start showing metrics and start showing data around a lot of the theories that we've been pitching for a while.
We've got a few more minutes. I've got more questions, but I just thought I'd open it up if there's questions from the audience. I don't know if we have a mic, or maybe you just have to yell, and then gentleman right there on the aisle.
Hi, good morning, Ben Foyle, TV Media. How do you deal with, do you have any way to assure people that they are where they stay? Is there, such a thing as location fraud, and how do you deal with it, or how do we deal with that in the future? For example, maybe somebody wants to look cool, they check in and add a text, and say they're here, but they're really not.
Because that's where all the cool kids are.
Well, I checked into the,
This doesn't happen to me much, so I'm really enjoying it. Did anyone hear the question? I'll just repeat it. Is there a chance of check-in fraud?
Yeah, so
you guys actually had an announcement yesterday.
We saw this early on. Like we decided, like, who the heck would ever check in someplace that they're not? Of course, people do that right away. And so, we found a way that, like, the phone has GPS, and basically you're telling us the location. And so, as long as those two things aren't far enough apart, then we just assume that you're at that location. We can't tell right now. Like, we keep waiting for phone technology to be a little bit better. Like, we can't tell if your hand is on the outside of the glass at Starbucks or the inside of the glass at Starbucks. And it might take 10 years before the phones get to the point. But we can tell if you're 4 blocks away from the Starbucks and just fake checking in. And we have FourSquare set up so that if we do sniff that you're a little further away than than you say you are or than you suggest you are, then we don't reward points or badges, or it doesn't count towards the specials and all those other things.
Does this market evolve to where it's not an act by the user, an active check-in, to where it's the user's passive, but his location's being tracked, all kinds of privacy issues and all that?
Yeah,
does it evolve there? Or that's a lot.
Well, it's always been in like 2 camps. There's people that are like, the check-in is kind of a little bit of a pain. Like, you got to think about it. You think about FourSquare, you got to take your phone out. It takes 15 seconds. On the other end of the spectrum, something that tracks you all the time is, I don't think anyone here wants that. Maybe say you do, but once you get it, you're like, I hate this. And so, we've done some experiments where, when you go into a familiar place, it should buzz you. Oh, you're at that coffee shop again. Do you want to check in? You're like, oh yeah, I forgot. Yes, I'll check in. And it goes from 20 seconds to like a 2-second experience.
Yeah, there's somewhere between the check-in and the minority report.
Yeah, so problem number 1 is that GPS isn't good enough. Problem number 2 is that when you keep that feature on, your battery lasts 4 hours. So if GPS can get better and the batteries get better, we're going to be in good shape.
Good opportunity. Mike?
So, Dennis, I'm really excited about this whole new engagement thing that's come out. You can talk about that a little bit. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious how this is kind of spring business adoption. I think that the key here is businesses with really cool stuff that people go.
Yeah, is
And
impeach
you
your
I
have
word or
50
ours?
think we shot online.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, sometimes, as this guy was saying, like, we do get people that fake check into places, and, you can be outside of the office and still check in outside of that Starbucks. And so, if a person that has claimed their venue sees that it's being taken advantage of, that someone's, the mayor that doesn't belong there, you can, like, impeach or just automatically oust that person. And so it's like, it's a feature that we built in for local merchants. Like, if you claim your venue, you have better control over it. What was the second question?
So the other part was like, so what are you guys doing to encourage businesses to put really cool things in place? Essentially, that's one thing.
Oh, yeah.
We're concerned about fake checking.
Yeah.
This guy over here nailed it, and businesses don't want to reward people for being something that they're not. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is like, people think that a lot of our deals are mayor deals because we get a lot of press when we make a lot of noise about that. But it's like 80% of them are if you've checked in once, if you've checked in 5 times, if you've been here 10 times this month. And so they're like loyalty cards. And so I think the product is going to evolve into that. The mayor specials are fun, but I think, we have a bunch of stuff launching, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe the beginning of next year, which is, it's revisiting a lot of the special stuff. New types of specials, better analytics on them, being able to run multiple specials at once. That's all feedback that we get from local merchants.
I'm going to take one more question, and unfortunately we're out of time. Yeah. So
Getting a
we'll
mayor.
talk about that. The question was, will there be affinity branding so you can look at your friends by brand?
Yeah, so you can take a look at your FourSquare social graph and see which of the brands that they follow. Yeah, one of the things I think we don't do a good job at, and this is like on the whiteboard pretty high up, is brand discovery. So when people come in, remember Twitter used to do suggested followers? We don't want to do that, but we want to be like, hey, based upon the places you go, like here's some, spirit brands you may be interested in. Here's some travel brands you may want to follow. Here are some nightlife brands or restaurant brands you may want to follow. As brands get better at surfacing content within FourSquare, like we'll get better at surfacing that stuff back up to users. So it's all in flux.
Okay, as always, half an hour goes way too fast, but please join me in thanking Dennis for time.